what's going to come out now.
It's like filming each other.
I'm just going to wait to see when people are on.
Everybody were outside Acton police station, 10 of us, all yellow.
It's live police station.
Yeah, mine's... Is mine live or your live? I'm just going to wait till the fire engine goes past everyone. You might want to come closer to hear it, yeah? Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today. I've got a statement that I'm going to read to you all because you have the right to know. As you can see, I'm outside the police station, which is Acton police station. I will be going into Acton police station shortly to have an interview. They inform me that if I do not attend, I will be arrested. So I am only here under a threat and coercion. I am not here of my own free will. They have asked me to attend the same station that one of those in the car attended, and they only interviewed him for 13 minutes. I bet they interview me for longer than that. Before I go in, I wanted to make a statement to you all. I feel you all have the right to know. Anybody who is close to me knows of all the attacks that I have faced for 4.5 years because I speak out against the Met Police cover-up of the murders of my son and his two friends, George and Harry. My friends all know. Could you hold this up here? Sorry everyone, just if you hold that up, that's easier. Thank you. Anybody who is close to me knows of all the attacks that I have faced for 4.5 years because I speak out against the Met Police in the cover-up of the murders of my son, Josh, George and Harry. My friends all know how I usually deal with those attacks, the trolling and videos made up about me, the continuous lies I have had to endure. They all know I just ignore them and just stay focused on our boys' cause. But sometimes there comes a time when you just can't stay silent anymore, and this time is now. Back in 2019, I was informed that Ian, one of the other boys' parents, was sending inappropriate messages to many different females of different ages. I received some of those explicit messages sent by Ian to one of those females. The contents of those messages I can only describe as paedophilic in nature. I confronted Ian about those messages, to which he saw no wrong. He said the female maybe must have some sort of mental health issue and called her vile names. He accused me of interfering in his private life and said what is private stays private. I knew I had to inform Nicola, Harry's mother, of those indecent messages, which at the time was a really hard thing to do, given the circumstances of the loss of her son, then having to face this on top of that. Nicola came round my house. I showed her the messages and I was completely shocked by her reaction. She didn't seem to see anything wrong in those messages. On leaving though, she asked me if I could keep quiet about them. Why would you ask me to keep quiet, Nicola, if you saw no wrong in them? I knew I could not keep quiet about those messages. It was everything I stood against. I went around to George's dad's house and showed him the messages because we were all supposed to be fighting for justice of our sons together. It was something I needed to tell him. I didn't want anything to do with Ian after that. After reading them, they made me feel sick. George's dad then informed me that 8 weeks after our sons were murdered, Ian was calling up George's stepmum, his wife, and sexually harassing her, jumping in her car up at the school, rubbing her leg. She had to tell him to stop doing that. He wouldn't leave her alone. He sent her inappropriate messages amongst other stuff. I then remembered, as George's dad was telling me this, that Ian kept making remarks to me about George's stepmum, about money and other awful things. I realised that this was to put me off her so that I would not find out what he was doing. This was 8 weeks after his own son was murdered. George's dad then went on to tell me that at an event, Ian followed a young girl to the toilet. He didn't go in, he just played around with the message board outside the toilet. When the young girl came out, he put his arm around her and thrust his bottom half up against her. This was witnessed by a few other people as well. Other things came to light about him sending money to a young girl. Then I received a message from another female about Ian saying disgusting things to her that were inappropriate. Again, I told Nicola. She just asked who the female was. I checked with the female if I could say who she was. She agreed then that I could tell Nicola. And then Nicola messaged the female and wasn't nice to her at all. All these things started to come to light in a matter of weeks from when I first received those messages. I confronted Nicola regarding all of the incidences I was made aware of, to which she just deflected and blamed all the females. She found no wrong in any of it. To say this was a shock is an understatement. Her behaviour was not normal. I knew she was going through a terrible time with the loss of her son, as I know myself how painful that is. So I thought maybe she just needed time for it to sink in. I also thought she had Stockholm Syndrome, which I said to her that she had. After all, Nicola was coming up to 40 and Ian was in his 70s, and they met when Nicola was young. Even though the messages were very stomach churning to read, I knew the messages alone were not enough to convict Ian of anything. I considered doing a live because I was concerned for the females that were on social media platforms. They needed protecting and people needed to know what he is. But I knew if I did that, he may go into the background and hide when he needed to be caught. I spoke to a few people that may have been able to help achieve this. In one day alone, he had friend requested 2 decoys in one day. Because before that progressed any further, he hid his account for a while. Then in the later part of December 2019, I received a message from one of Tommy's team informing me that Ian had been caught sending nudes to young girls and they were going to expose him. It felt like a fresher breath air. Finally, I thought people are going to see what he is and this will stop him. Harassing, grooming, sending inappropriate messages to females online. I waited and waited for the exposure and nothing came. Things came to a head with Nicola in 2020. We hadn't been speaking because of everything that came to light. Shocked at her reaction to it all. I felt like I was still waiting for her to turn a light on. I missed her. I had a bereavement bond with her. I just couldn't understand why she couldn't see it. Why couldn't she see how bad it was? It just didn't add up. It didn't take me long after that to realise she was part of it. She was his protector. Nicola contacted me regarding the funds in February 2020, 2 years after I had officially stopped raising funds, clearly with some expectation of being owed something or expecting information to be given to her. As far as I was concerned, she gave up that right once I found out about Ian, and she chose to ignore it all, which was actually aiding Ian in what he was doing to females. I sat staring at her message for 45 minutes, just looking at it, knowing why she had messaged me. I just knew what they was going to do. It was at that moment that anything I ever felt for her disappeared. I felt nothing for her anymore. I was so angry, I didn't give her the response she wanted. I made the decision to stop funding for the boys in December of 2018 because of the continuous lies by the trolls and the threat of arrest at the Charlton game of Brian the Lion, a dear friend of mine. The funding was for all that is involved in bringing our boys' case to court, a private prosecution against the Met Police. Once we could show what they did, then this would quash the original conviction and bring about the right charge of triple murder and 2 attempted murders to those in their car that night. Those funds were solely for anything to do with the boys' cause. They were not funds raised for the families themselves. Nicola was fully aware of what we had raised, as she was the one counting some of the buckets that were brought back to my home. Other buckets stayed elsewhere, and would have known what we had received from the crowdfunding, as this was online, and the other events attended by us. Nicola was at every football raising event, apart from when I went to Manchester and met up with John Lawrence and a couple of others. CC'd in countless of invoice emails, so fully aware of what the transactions were regarding the funds. Then a few months after, I was told there were videos on YouTube where one of the main instigators, the police grass busker, who was attacking me and those close to me, he was now claiming that Ian and Nicola had been speaking to him and siding with the things that he was saying about me. He had been making false allegations for a long time about the funds raised for the boys, which now I had Nicola and Ian joining in with him. Ian was doing his best to destroy the fight for our justice for our sons. That is clear with the allegations he has made and who he has teamed up with. He has even gone as far to say to people who have messaged him, who wanted to support the boys,
Justice for the boys.
the boys' cause. He has said to them, don't donate to her, she spends it on herself. Sorry, we've got police behind us. I can't blame people for believing these things when it comes from another parent. Who wouldn't believe that? Without knowing the background to why he would say such things. These are just some of the things I have had to endure. Please share this video, people. Please share it. I've been silent too long. Another example of their manipulation was regarding the 2 benches that my daughter had raised the money for. We had been waiting for planning permission, only to find out that this was not the correct route. In hindsight, I should have chased the council up earlier, but I was doing everything else. So this got put on the back burner, so to speak. Nicola and Ian went and bought 2 benches to make it look like that I was not going to buy them. All the details to this and the updates of the letters I was receiving are still online for people to see. I still continue to ignore the slander on my character, as I knew I had nothing to hide. I also knew the reason Ian and Nicola were doing this to me, because of what I found out about Ian. Because as already said, it was the same thing they did against George's stepmum, so it was not a surprise. I was not surprised at what they was doing or saying about me. After this, I started seeing garden parties online, with Nicola trying to create a little gang around her of a few women that we both knew. These were women I had respect for. I knew they didn't know the full information of what had gone on in the background, so I never held any grudge towards them. I knew Nicola was turning them against me intentionally because she didn't want them knowing what I knew. After a couple of months of these parties being broadcasted, thank you for sharing. After a couple of months of these parties being broadcasted online, my other close friends had had enough. They saw a comment online and felt it was the last straw. They knew I would just continue to let them and all the other trolls just keep saying what they wanted to say, because we all wanted Ian caught, but this could not go on. So they sent all those women at those parties a copy of some of the explicit paedophilic messages that Ian had sent. That is when they realised they had been used and manipulated by Nicola and Ian. That same day they received the messages, Nicola knew they had received them. She turned up at my house shouting and screaming. The neighbour heard her shouting, "Where's my money?" The funds raised for the boys' fight for justice was solely for the boys' cause. Again, I will say, not for the families. That night, Sharon, one of the women confronted Nicola, just like I did. Again, like with me, Nicola saw no wrong in those sick messages. I met with Sharon and Louise, who were really shocked by it all, as were the other women. They also apologised to me, which they had no need because it wasn't their fault. Sharon was a long-term friend of Nicola's. We discussed the messages and other things I had found out. I explained the messages alone were not enough to convict Ian of anything. She explained to me how Nicola had said to them that I had spent all the funds on myself, that they now realised that was a smoke screen. After this, because Sharon, like me, didn't stay quiet, Sharon also found out about other sinister things. So she went round to Nicola's mum's house and showed them the messages. Ian didn't like the fact that Sharon had done this and let out what they considered their private stuff. Ian started to then attack Sharon, harassing her, scratching up her car daily, turning up at her workplace, threatening to get her and calling her vile names. Sharon got Ian taken to court. She got an injunction. Then he breached the injunction. She took him to court again, only this time he managed to get everything overturned and all charges dropped. Now, how did he manage to do that, I ask you? For the last 2 years, on the anniversary of our boys' murders, at the scene, Ian has turned up with bodyguards to make himself look like a victim at a place that should be peacefully respected. All I can say is this, that he and Nicola have made malicious allegations against me claiming misuse of funds, working with the very institution against me that covered up the murder of his son to save his own skin. I did nothing but to try and help Nicola after the murders of our boys. I had a small business which Nicola worked in. After what happened, I knew I couldn't face going into that office anymore as my son had painted it for me. And on some evenings during the week, he worked next door. I just couldn't face it.
Go on, girl. Go on, girl.
Thank you. I still continued to pay Nicola, which was of my own choice, as I felt she wouldn't be able to work there again, either. I felt sorry for her, even though I was going through the same thing. I told her I would pay her for as long as I could. I paid Nicola in 2018 nearly £7,500 wages, which she didn't have to work one day for. As soon as I said I couldn't afford to pay her anymore, she went straight back to work part-time. I was shocked. I wish she had told me before that she would have gone back to work. In June 2019, I lost that business because the council pulled the contract I had. They said they wanted to see me at the helm, and because I wasn't, they pulled their contract. They owed me money that they said they would pay, and they did not pay it. I had only 2 days to clear out the office. No help to do that from Nicola. Bet you didn't tell anyone about the money, did you, Nicola? After June 2019, thank you. Sorry. I had 2 days to clear out the Nicola. No help, the office. No help to do that from Nicola. But you didn't tell anyone about the money, did you, Nicola? After June 2019, I ended up in debt. My car taken, the bailiff, aided by police. I was lucky that I had some good real friends and family that helped me during these times, including one of the other parents who helped me out. They knew I was left with nothing, yet Nicola didn't even ask if I needed a loaf of bread. I was not going to mention this part of this, because if you give something from the bottom of your heart out of kindness, or for whatever reason, it's not something you would tell people. However, in this instance, as pointed out to me, it's important as it shows the kind of people these two are. People take kindness as a weakness, and it most certainly is not. I have spoken to one of the other parents who is fully aware of me informing you all of this today and fully understands it. Since all this has come to light in the later part of 2019 regarding the messages, it has only been me out of all the parents fighting for those boys. The other parents gave up as they believed that Ian spoilt it. I respect their decisions as they are really good people. They have been through a lot and have had to put up with what Ian did to them, but it never stopped me fighting for those boys. I have faced death threats, and some of those came from Ian himself. Constant attacks on my character online, constant accusations that I'm a cocaine addict and raised £120,000 and spent it all on coke, malicious communication and harassment from the police. Sadly, many people believe these things without any evidence. Please, please, in future, if you hear vile remarks about anybody, not just me, ask them for the evidence before just believing them. So when you see online anybody making disgusting claims about me, know they are not on your side. They are lying to you to distract and divert you from our boys' cause. All I can say to you supporters of the boys and to anyone who donated, I have never and would never use a penny raised for those boys' cause for anything but the cause. Too many people online judge you by their low standards, and many accuse you of what they actually do to deflect it from themselves. To anyone who has supported and donated, and to my family and friends who have always stood by me, and there's a few of them here today, to turn up to support me. And many of you have been attacked yourselves and arrested. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I am sorry to you people listening that you have had to hear all of this, that you have a right to hear it. No one, and I mean no one, no matter how bad something has happened to them, does that then give them the right to abuse and sexually harass females. The ones who got in touch with me were either distraught or very upset by what he had done. I want them to know we never forgot about them or what was done to them. You have to ask yourself who's worth more to the police, Ian the predator or me who speaks out against them. They must be rubbing their hands in there together right now, waiting for me to enter their lair. The fight goes on, people. Never surrender, no matter how tough it gets. Please keep going. And finally, a message to you, Ian and Nicola. By working with the police, you have betrayed your own son. Now everyone knows who you really are. I hope you have a nice day. Thank you, everyone.